Hello, I'm Sue Roper. I'm the president of the Tri-County Women Veterans Group, and here with me is...
I'm Dorothy Ebacher, and I was in the Navy.
I'm Diana Cox, and I was in the Air Force.
I'm Betsy Nolan. I was in the Navy.
I'm Susan Ongst. I was in the United States Air Force.
Tri-County Women Veterans are proud to sponsor this episode of Central Florida Salute. Salute.
Hello, welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. I'm your host, Bob Peters, and I have a guest who's not only a guest, he's a friend. It's Bob Grenier. He's an author, historian, preservationist, a curator and exhibit designer, county historical museum retired, and he's all over the place. And it's good to see you again, my friend.
Bob.
You know, we're here to talk about some of your books. We have several of these books. You really get around.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I met you years ago at the Lake County Museum, and I tell everybody I love museums. So that's where I met you. Now you helped me put in a display for Salute. And then I went over to Ocala. We did a show, a road show.
Yes.
And they have an exhibit over there. And they said, well, Bob Grenier is the guy. Is there nothing you're not into or what?
Love helping the veterans, Bob. Love helping the veterans. And, of course, I love museums, too, just like you. We have that in common. And I remember when I first met you, you actually had me and Rick Reed on one of your shows.
That's
at the time,
right.
talk about the Medal of Honor recipients. So, yes, I remember.
And you also talked about the prisoners of war.
Yeah, prisoners of war. Absolutely.
A lot of history.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally?
I'm born in Chicago, raised in a west suburb of called North Lake, Illinois. So I'm a Chicagoan, but I came down here when I was 26 years old, and I've been here for, I'm 64, so you can do the math. So I've been here in Lake County for a long time now. And how I got interested is basically my dad. Took me to, one time while I was living here, I went to Chicago to visit my folks, and he says, why don't we take a drive to Gettysburg? And once in Gettysburg, you just get hooked. And from that point on, I started doing a lot of historical preservation work and museum work.
And you go all around Florida, right?
All over Florida. I help out with, I started a lot of historical societies, people, townships and cities who want to start a historical society. They call me and I help them get started, what to do to get historical society started. I help out with museums, memorials, anything, signage on roads, historical markers, things like that. National Register of Historic Places. So I kind of consult and help out. When I came back from Gettysburg, and I was here in Florida at the time, and when I came back from that trip, the whole bug, the historical bug, my dad was a big fan of the war between the states and had a lot of artifacts. But as youngsters, me and my brothers and sisters, really at the time, I don't think we really got into it with him. We didn't enjoy it. But after that trip to Gettysburg, when I came back here, I really wanted to get into anything, a Civil War round table, anything veteran I wanted to get into, and I did, in a big way.
Yeah, you did. That you did. So tell me about, you decided to write some books. Which is your first book?
Well, in this grouping here, it's not here. My first book was on Captain Melton Haynes, a local hero. He was a Confederate soldier, became an elected official, introduced the Sweet Orange to this area. So that was a biography. That was my first book, and that came out, that was like 2003 when that came out. Still popular today, even though I'm not reprinting it because I'm actually writing a novel based on his life. So it's fun. And then I was doing some historical preservation on Captain Haynes's 1871 Woodley house. So the history was so fascinating that I decided to write a history of that. And actually, I wrote 2 editions of Woodley, Life on the Lake of the Dancing Sunbeams, which is right on Lake Harris in Tavares. Lake Harris is the Lake of the Dancing Sunbeams because it was called Lake Astatula by the Native Americans of the area. And so I wrote 2 editions of that, and then Arcadia Publishing came calling, and I did, they're the largest publishers of local and regional books in America, and Tavares didn't have one. I became a city councilman for Tavares, and I thought that we needed to have one. They're very popular books, so I did Tavares, and then followed that up with the city of Leesburg, of these images of America. It's the ones very popular, see them at all the gift shops and stuff. So I really did that, and then I decided I need to get more into our veterans. I wanted to write more about our veterans, and then that's when Central Florida started with with my love of the war between the states. So I wrote Central Florida Civil War veterans, and went to all the surrounding counties and started gathering up histories.
This one here, right?
This one right here.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that one right there.
Central Florida
Civil War veterans.
Civil War
So
veterans.
I went to Polk County, Osceola, Lake, Sumter, Seminole, Orange, Volusia. I went to all these counties, and I did research. Unlike the World War II book, I couldn't interview anybody from the war between the states, but I got a lot of history from family, a lot of families, descendants of a lot of the soldiers. And some great stories in that Civil War. Matter of fact, one of them is, on the Union side, is a Medal of Honor recipient who's buried here in Eustis, Captain Albert Wright, who received his Medal of Honor through his efforts at the Battle of the Crater in Petersburg, Virginia. An extraordinary story. And of course, on the Confederate side here, just a few blocks away from where we're sitting right now, is the home of Captain J.J. Dickinson, who was known as the Swamp Fox of Florida, and also known as Dixie, and people used to call this Dixie's Land. And
Is that like because of Dixie Avenue that they have there? Is that part of it or no?
well, Dixie is kind of more of because of it's kind of associated with the South and the song.
Okay.
But this area, this whole Central Florida area was kind of known by them. The Union soldiers call him Dixie. So this was Dixie's Land. And he was an extraordinary guy. He was nicknamed the Swamp Fox because of Francis Marion during the Revolutionary War. He fought with those same type of tactics because he was always so outnumbered by the Union forces here in Florida, anywhere from 3-1 to 10-1. So he had to use a lot of that kind of tactics, that Swamp Fox tactics, in his engagements. So,
I went to Lake County Historical Museum that you helped put a lot of that together. And when the first time I was up there, I noticed so many people from the north that came down here to fight. And I saw a Connecticut group, and that's where I'm from. I didn't realize when I think of the Civil War, I think it's kind of like they meet in the middle, I didn't know if they come all the way down here. And
they did, and there were several units from Connecticut, including the 17th Connecticut, that were here and engaged Dickinson at various locations here in Central Florida and close by here. So yeah, there was several Connecticut units. That's right, you're from Connecticut. So there were several Connecticut units here. Absolutely.
So you did a lot on the Civil War. And you did, we have the World War II.
Yeah, I followed it up with Central Florida's World War II veterans, and I went to all the same counties, historical societies, museums, people, to see about getting their stories for this book. And when I did this book about 4 years ago, when I went to these people's homes, there was still a lot of veterans, sadly. Some of them passed, obviously, World War II veterans, some of them passed. And when I did the stories and met with them in their homes, most of the time in their homes, it was always very sad. And I write about it in introduction because after I would leave them, their stories were so touching to me. And, I'd get that tear in the eye because, not only because the stories were so touching, but will I ever see this person again?
Yeah.
And that always kind of grabbed me. And
I know that feeling.
yeah, and so, we got some great people in there. Our own Robert McTorris' stories in there, the Medal of Honor recipient from Lake County. You got Daniel Keel, who was a Tuskegee Airman, who's still with us. He's in Claremont. He's done a lot of talks. And
He has done an interview with me.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he's an amazing man.
He's featured. As a matter of fact, my dad, this book came out right before Dad passed away in 2016. My dad did a sketch of Daniel Keel, which he loved, so we presented my dad's original sketch of him to Daniel Keel, and he loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, he's quite the gentleman. I had quite the interview with him, and he told me about the prejudice and all that, with the what. It took a while before we integrated the forces, in World War II. Prior to that, everybody was separate, and there's a lot of history, as you know, but he had some issues with a couple of white soldiers who didn't want to recognize his ability.
That's right.
And,
he was a triple-rated pilot. I mean, he was an extraordinary man with a lot of talent. And when I was a curator at the museum, I had a mural done in the first panel that had Robert McTorris, General Summerall, Albert Wright, Captain Wright, and I added Daniel Keel and General Polly Pyer, because General Polly Pyer was the first Lake County woman to be promoted to a general. So I added Daniel Keel and General Pyer to that mural. Yeah, they're both fascinating people, and Daniel Keel's certainly a fun guy.
I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I go there quite a bit, and as a matter of fact, there's a little thing about salute up there. I'm very proud of that.
Yes.
But anyway, we've got this one here now. This one here, From Farm to Flight to Faith.
Yeah, that's a fun story. Bernie DeFore. Now, Bernie I go see pretty much weekly. I still visit him. He just turned 99 years old in November.
Wow.
And he was a great story. Back when I was putting together the World War II book, I went to Osceola County, and one of the guys at Good Samaritan gathered all these World War II veterans from Good Samaritan. And Bernie was the oldest, so he went last. So I had about 7 or 8 guys there, World War II veterans. Again, some have passed, and there's Bernie still going, 99. But Bernie was last, and he said to me, he says, well, I didn't bring any pictures or anything. I says, oh, how come, Bernie? He says, well, I was always thinking of writing a little book of my story. I said, oh, okay, well, that's okay. Could I at least get a modern picture of you and put it in the book? He says, why don't we go out to lunch? So we went out to lunch to a restaurant, and I saw a picture at the restaurant, which I thought was kind of a movie still, Don Amici and Ida Lupino. I thought it was a couple of actors and actresses in the picture. And the lady at the counter, who I still know, a good friend, said, no, that's Bernie and his wife. I said, that's Bernie. I said, Bernie, you're holding out on me. Anyways, he told the story. I met with him more. He did 30 missions as a flight engineer on a B-17, and so I started reading through his story, and I could have made that book very thick. With 30 missions, I could have made it very thick, but I decided to make it a message, so from farm to flight to faith. And I looked at, first of all, he kept, as a flight engineer, he kept journal of everything that took place. So one of the things that I happen to see is in mission 16, where it says, me and so-and-so and so-and-so dropped the ball turret. And I'm thinking, drop the ball turret. So I says, because we were going over, and I says, this is kind of unusual. I want to focus on this story. So he says, yeah, we had to drop the ball turret. We got flak so bad, and we weren't going to make it back. And so the captain had said that we are going to be prisoners of the German Third Reich. And he said to the captain, I don't want to be a prisoner of the Third Reich. He says, well, what can we do? So he asked how much fuel, and it didn't look like they were going to make it back. He says, we need to drop the ball turret. And so they did. It was freezing cold. He's got remnants of frostbite still in his hands. And the guys did feed oxygen to him and what have you. And they dropped the ball turret. I couldn't figure out how they do it, but they did make it back. As a matter of fact, he did say that the Tuskegee Airmen were escorts at that time, and he remembered Tuskegee Airmen coming by and helping him escort back, and they did make it. But the faith one comes in the next mission, because Bernie's a big man. He's 6'2", a big guy, and he didn't want to go. he said, this is it. We are not going to make it. We are not going to, we're doomed. This is the flight we're going to be doomed on. This is the mission we're going to be doomed on. He remembered his mother being, during the Depression, being a woman of great faith, but he couldn't understand if there was a God at all. If God, why you let all this happen from wars to the Depression?
Yeah.
That's right. But anyway, so the ground crew and a couple of his guys were putting all his stuff on. No, Bernie, you saved our lives. Come on, we're going back. We're going to make it. So they put everything on, and when he got in this little cubicle, the flight engineer spot, he got in there, he started talking to God. He started praying and talking to God and saying, if, indeed, I survived this and survived the war, I will give you my life, And sure enough, he survived that. And
I think I had the honor of meeting him, didn't I?
great man. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Just a wonderful man. And I started filming him, too. I've got one more sit-down with him because I always thought somewhere along the line I'd like to write about all the other missions and everything else that he did during the war. I mean, it wasn't... B-17 flight crews most of them did not make 30 missions. If they made 6, 8, 10,
Yeah.
they were doing well.
There's a lot of them, a lot of planes that were shot down in the ocean. It's amazing.
Absolutely, and he, some of his visuals that he talked about of what he saw, from other airplanes being blown and guys falling out, and
He'd be a good candidate
absolutely
for Central Florida.
Absolutely, yeah. And he lives at home, and he's strong, and and like I say, he just turned 99. We're planning his 100th birthday. I mean, he's just doing terrific.
Well, that's great.
Absolutely. So that's what that story's
There's
about.
a few of them around. My buddy Walter Lambert is around. He was on D-Day, and we've done a couple shows. But yeah, so he's an interesting man. I got to agree with you there. I met him. Now we have this next book, because you've got 9 books you wrote?
I've written 9 books, and number 9 came out last week. And this one is, as you can see, it's a thick book there. So this guy, Major...
Let me hold that up
hold
the
that.
camera can focus
Absolutely,
in on
because
that
that's the new book, so, I got to promote that one, too.
Oh, yeah.
Major Alexander St. Clair Abrams lived an extraordinary life. He was a Confederate veteran, but he was also a soldier correspondent. And the stories, and even as an 18, 19-year-old during the war, he managed to write several books that got published. When he was a soldier correspondent, he was out in the field sent by the Atlanta Intelligencer. And so he would write about what he saw. And even though he was a young man, he had press credentials, which put him with the commanders, so he could interview them, see the dispatches, like when Siege of Vicksburg, where he was at, when Grant came in, he had access to all of Grant's dispatches to Pemberton, General Pemberton, and Pemberton back to him, which he included in this Siege of Vicksburg book, which got published in 1863. So you're talking an 18-year-old young man who was quite extraordinary. And from there, what happened is, when the war ended and he was back in Atlanta, he was wounded twice during the war, during Sherman's march. When he was back in Atlanta with his wife, after Sherman went through and he was wounded, he went back to Atlanta and he helped being part of the rebuilding after Sherman went through Atlanta. What happened was a guy up in New York named James Gordon Bennett. He's the guy who invented sensationalized yellow journalism for newspapers. Anyways, he had the New York Herald in New York, and he sent out 60 guys and with what he called the Herald headquarters in all the Union camps. He instructed those 60 correspondents to send back Southern newspapers because he wanted to know how the South was reporting the war. So up there, he had this room where these guys would study all these different the newspaper articles in the Southern papers. Well, after the war, James Gordon Bennett, one of the Southern reporters, he saw that he really liked the style of writing. Of course, the novel that he wrote and the Siege of Vicksburg that he wrote while a soldier. He hired him. He wanted to find this guy. Find this St. Clair Abrams, this young man. I want to hire him here in New York. And then his wife, and his 1-year-old son in 1865 went to New York and worked for about 7 years for the Herald, rose all the way to the top. James Gordon Bennett Jr., who was kind of a flamboyant, playboyish type of son of a rich man. He actually was a yachtsman, and the Union Army actually had him in his yacht, the Henrietta, commissioned during the war, commissioned him as a lieutenant. He's the one who came down and raised a flag on Fernandina Beach here in Florida, in the Union Army. But St. Clair Abrams, the very southern guy, and the Bennetts got along so well. As a matter of fact, in 1880, when St. Clair Abrams was here, establishing Tavares, founded Tavares, and establishing Lake County, all his investors to build what he wanted to be the new capital of Florida, because he wanted to take it away from Tallahassee and establish here in Central Florida, were all these northern investors, whether they were businessmen, railroad men, oil men, theatrical people. They were all his big investors here in Tavares in Lake County. So he's a guy who, even though to his end, when he was even passing at 86 in Jacksonville, even though he was, he still was the Judge Advocate General for the United Confederate Veterans, he became a great American patriot. And his life story is extraordinary, from what he did as a lawyer, an orator, an elected official, as a newspaper editor, as a citrus grower, as a railroad magnate. As an attorney, Henry Plant, Henry Flagler, and John Rockefeller were his clients. So he was an extraordinary man, and you can see it's a big fat book, and I'm not sure if I got his whole life in there. And I'm giving speeches and I'm on a tour now with this book, and yet there's no way in some speeches, which are a half hour, some are an hour, I can't get the 86 years of this extraordinary man's life into one talk.
We can't do 86 years right now either. But it's an amazing book. It's where would someone get this book?
Right now, we are going to make it available online, and but at this moment, right now, I'm giving the speeches. Since the book just came to me last week, maybe you can put the email on there or for my card on the screen, and I. More than happy to people to contact me, and we'll get them a book. I'll sign the book, and then, like I said, I will be getting it put up onto the internet.
So you want to give purchase. Why don't you mention your? Would you want to mention your email address?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me put on my glasses.
You don't have it memorized?
Oh, I do, but it's BobbyAG22@gmail.com. So that's BOBBYAG22@gmail.com.
Okay.
And please get a hold of me, and I'll be more than happy. It's a book I'm very proud of. Very proud.
These other books, I know, like these the Civil War and this other one, World War II, you can get those at the museum.
You get them at the museum. You could get a hold of Arcadia, which is obviously a large publisher, and you can go right to their website and order the books there. But, Walgreens, CVS, Pharmacy, Books A Million, all carry my Arcadia books. Okay. And I've done 4 of them, with the 5th one coming out in October.
Well, what's that going to be about, pray tell?
Well, it's a regional book, and I love the people in East Lake County. I helped them get their historical society started, I think, back in 2008. I was a First Life member, and I always told them one day I would help them out with their things. And I do. They have heritage festivals and a lot of things, and I help them out. So I went to them and said, you guys need one of these books. There's so much history here, and they're so popular, and it'd be a great fundraiser. And so I, on behalf of them, went to Arcadia and gave a sales pitch to them, and Arcadia loved the idea. And since I'd done 4 books with them, jumped right on to sending me a contract to do the book for East Lake County, Sorrento, Mount Plymouth, East Lake County. A lot of veterans there, too.
We did a show with a Korean veteran, Gene Packwood. You know very well. And
he designed a cover of the Major St. Clair Abrams book.
Oh, did he? Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to talk about that little thing you have in your hand.
Yeah.
Gene Packwood was Korea.
Yeah.
He did a lot of cartoons, not political, military type.
Right.
How would you describe it?
Well, combat art.
Combat art.
For the magazines, the Marine Corps magazine, Leatherneck. And what he did also is when he would fly in the airplanes, he would actually sketch what he saw. They weren't photographing it. He would sketch what he saw. A lot of, of course, he created the cartoon character Leatherhead, and actually published some books with Leatherhead cartoons. Well, in this book, Packwood, here, I'm actually bringing back his character. So I think featured throughout the three parts of this book, which I'll talk about, will be the character Leatherhead with some words of wisdom or some Marine Corps sayings that would be, I think, fun and scattered throughout the book. But Gene is a great guy, and a great friend, big fan of his, and I've always wanted to do this book with his, because all his cartoons, and he did political cartoonist, that's what he was in, after the service, but he also had a lot of cartoons that were patriotic. So whether they were, and they appeared, most of them in color, in the newspapers, so Flag Day, Memorial Day, George Washington, 4th of July, they were wonderful. I thought, all of these patriotic cartoons need to come together into one, book. So I met with him. I said, I'd like to put these in the book. And then it evolved from there to include in the first part his life and the extraordinary thing that what he did in the Korean War. And I was going to do a book, Central Florida's Korean War veterans.
I was going to ask you, where's the Korean movie?
And then I was going to do Central Florida's Vietnam veterans. So I had two books, but I thought of something a little different. I thought, what a perfect opportunity, being him a Korean veteran and patriotic art. And I can actually, because with an Arcadia book, you got 50 to 70 words per caption. Here, doing it myself, publishing it, I can write about any particular subject. As a matter of fact, Bob, your Central Florida Salute show is going to be one of the features. I'm going to do a feature in this Packwood book on your show.
You heard it here today, folks.
Absolutely. So, and I would like to talk to the folks at the Ashley House. I think that would be a wonderful thing to also feature there as well.
They are super people there.
Yep. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, and basically the subtitle here is A Collection of Marine Corps Combat Art and Patriotic Newspaper Editorial Cartoons by Gene Packwood, and a special tribute to Korean Vietnam veterans. Though, and you don't have to have been in combat in Korea or Vietnam. Anybody who signed on the dotted line between 1948 and 1978 are going to be included in this book. And it doesn't actually have to be from Central Florida. I'm going to include my late father, who was in the National Guard for 10 years and was active for Korea. And so can include him. And so, I mean, anybody who signed that dotted line, they knew what they could be in for.
Well, we all take that oath,
That's right.
For the God country and up to including my life,
Absolutely.
And, that's why I do what I do.
Absolutely.
With Central Florida Salute, because of the men and the women. And matter of fact, you stick around after the filming here, I will introduce you to two great women that you'd like to meet. They should be coming in pretty soon.
And I need some women for big. There's a lot of women in both the Civil War and the World War II book. I need to get some more women included in this Packwood book for Korea and the Vietnam era.
Stick around for another 10, 15 minutes.
Sounds great. Absolutely. And they could send me pictures over the email and mini biographies. And that's how a lot of people, there's some people where I'm actually going, again, I like to go to different places, meet with the veterans. And next to my computer, I got a stack of veterans, 6 inches tall.
If you ever did Bob Grenier's memoirs, the book would be about that big, I guess.
Thank you, Bob.
You have met so many people, and you've written so many great books that, wow, it's
Well, I
amazing.
appreciate that. I remember when I was a city councilman for Tavares and I left, a couple of people had come up to me, and it was quite flattering. One was the police chief who had said to me, he says, Bob, someday somebody's going to write a book about you.
Yeah.
Hey, fun, I took it as a compliment it was. But what I like to do is I like to share history and I like to honor veterans. And that combination is what motivates me to do, whether it's an event, a memorial service, or write a book.
I share that. That's why I do Central Florida Salute YouTube,
Absolutely.
because I want the stories to get out about these people. I want people to know about people like you who are preserving history and opening people's eyes, I told you a story one time how I went to a school and they didn't know too much about World War II. And one kid said Hitler ran Germany. He was in World War I, which was correct. And he wasn't a bad guy. And I said, we need to educate these people.
That's right.
These
That's
kids.
right. Well, Bob, in these books here, you can read dozens and dozens and dozens of books like the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln or Robert E. Lee or General Grant. Same with World War II, with all the famous generals during World War II, Patton and so on and so forth. But these books contain the people, what I call kind of forgotten. These are the everyday people who you interview in this show. This is who's included in these books. I want these people brought out and write about. And I sent 2 copies to the Library of Congress, to get my copyright certification, because I want these people who will never be in a book outside of this to be in a book, and for people to read about.
Boy, oh boy, and you're bringing back memories to me. We just lost a friend, Bert Neese. And he's one of those guys. It's just you see him sitting on a bar stool at the AMVETS all the time. Doesn't really talk much, but come to find out, during Korea he was captive, caught. He escaped, him and another guy, and he carried the guy for a mile before he realized he had died.
Yeah.
And 60 years later, to a friend, late Bill Corbally, and thanks to Congressman Webster's office, we got him his medals.
Absolutely,
and you never know. You're sitting there next to a guy and you have no idea who he is. We have got guys in here that were tunnel rats. And if you don't know what a tunnel rat is, that was not an easy. That was very dangerous. You get crawling through the tunnel to find out if anybody's down there.
Yeah, we've had some of the stories of the guys I interviewed, like in the World War II book. Such amazing stories, and I could have actually included a lot more, but Arcadia only requires a certain amount that's only that you can put in there. But the stories were so fascinating, picking it up. Like one guy who was early in the war, where his ship was sunk, and they were floating around, and a German U-boat came up, but that was before it really got tyrannical with the German, because this captain of this German U-boat said 800 miles that way is Africa. You guys will make it. You'll make it. And because they were disabled, you guys will make it, and let them go. The guy ended up, this same guy who did make it to Africa, eventually became part of the French resistance, helped out with the French resistance. So the stories are fascinating, Bob, and I want to do that for the Korean Vietnam veterans to get these stories out.
You and I could chat all day about that, but another one of those stories is the Christmas story of World War I. Remember that, where they all came out of the foxholes?
Yes. And that's a touching.
It is, and I like what you do. It's kind of like what I do. We talk about the common people who are everyday heroes.
Everyday heroes.
And I applaud you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you.
But I think we're running out of time.
Darn,
because we could talk forever.
We sure can.
And this is how we say goodbye. Non-veterans go like this, veterans salute like that. So, all right, and join me, because I know you've seen a few of these shows.
Oh, yeah.
To all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.
Take care.
You did a great job, Bob.
Thanks.
Since 2009, Project SOS has assisted our veterans both overseas and here at home to overcome medical issues, homelessness, and disabilities. Initially, our efforts resulted in over 22 clinics opened in Iraq and Afghanistan. Recently, as troops have been withdrawn, we have concentrated on issues here at home. During this past year, we have been able to distribute 42 motorized wheelchairs and numerous mobility devices to our local veterans who have served in World War II and up to and including Afghanistan. We continue to offer solutions to our local homeless veterans in the Ocala National Forest and other Central Florida locations. Project SOS Support Our Soldiers needs your assistance to continue helping a growing homeless veterans population. Over-the-counter medications and personal hygiene supplies are acutely needed. Your financial aid will greatly increase the support they so desperately need.